In the heart of a bustling city, where the sound of sirens often drowned out the laughter of children, a young woman named Lisa Bennett found herself in a situation that would test her strength and resilience. Lisa was a dedicated paralegal, working diligently to support her dreams of becoming a lawyer. She was bright, ambitious, and deeply committed to justice. But on this particular afternoon, as she made her way home from a long day at the office, she would find herself in a confrontation that would leave her shaken and questioning everything she believed about the world. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow on the streets as Lisa walked to her car. The evening air was crisp, and the city was alive with the sounds of chatter and laughter. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, a welcome reprieve from the stress of her job. As she approached her parked car, she noticed a police vehicle pulling up nearby. The officer inside, a burly man with a scowl etched deep into his face, watched her with an intensity that made her uneasy. Lisa brushed off the feeling, reminding herself that she had done nothing wrong. She slid into her car, took a deep breath, and turned the key in the ignition. But before she could pull away, the police car blocked her path. The officer stepped out, his imposing figure towering over her vehicle. "Ma'am, can you step out of the car?" he commanded, his voice gruff and devoid of any warmth. Lisa's heart raced. She complied, stepping out and closing the door behind her. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "License and registration," he demanded, his eyes narrowing as he scanned her. There was an unmistakable hostility in his gaze. "Of course. Just a moment," Lisa replied, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her purse. She felt a knot form in her stomach, sensing that something was off. As she produced her documents, the officer's demeanor shifted, his expression hardening further. "You're driving a vehicle registered to a black woman. Are you sure you're the owner?" Lisa felt the sting of his words. "Yes, I am. My name is on the registration," she said, her voice unwavering despite the tension. "Step back," he ordered abruptly, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for driving a stolen vehicle." "Excuse me? That's not possible. This is my car," Lisa protested, her heart pounding in her chest. But the officer was already moving towards her, his intentions clear. "I don't want to hear it. You're making this worse for yourself," he barked, forcing her hands behind her back and securing the cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Lisa was filled with a mix of disbelief and anger. How could this be happening? She had done nothing wrong. As the officer led her towards the back of his cruiser, the weight of the situation began to sink in. She felt the eyes of passers-by upon her, their gazes filled with curiosity and judgment. "Please, just let me explain," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'm a paralegal. I work for a law firm. This is my car." The officer scoffed, seemingly unconcerned with her explanation. "Save it for the judge, lady," he said, shoving her into the back of the police vehicle. In that moment, Lisa felt a surge of anger and humiliation. But she also felt something else, a flicker of hope deep within her. She remembered the small badge she kept in her wallet, a gift from her mentor who was a respected judge in the city. It was a reminder of her dreams, her determination, and the fight for justice that had brought her to this point in her life. As the officer climbed into the front seat, Lisa took a deep breath. She needed to act fast. She fumbled through her purse, her heart racing as she felt the cool metal of the badge in her fingers. With her hands still cuffed, it was a challenge, but she managed to pull it out and hold it up to the window that separated her from the officer. "Wait," she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. The officer turned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What now?" "This is my judge's badge," Lisa said, the weight of her words filling the air between them. "I work in the legal field. You can't arrest me for something I didn't do." The officer's eyes widened as he took in the badge. For a moment he seemed to falter, uncertainty creeping into his demeanor. But then he regained his composure. "That doesn't mean anything. I'm still taking you in," he said, his voice laced with defiance. Lisa's heart sank. She couldn't believe what was happening. It was as if the world was closing in on her, and she was powerless to stop it. But she refused to back down. "Please, just call my supervisor," she urged, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around her. "You'll see, I'm not a criminal." The officer hesitated, his grip on the steering wheel tightening, Lisa could see the internal struggle written across his face. Finally, he relented, pulling out his radio. "I'll call it in," he muttered, his voice begrudging. As he spoke into the radio, Lisa felt a surge of hope. Maybe this would all be cleared up soon. Maybe justice would prevail. But as the conversation continued, the officer's tone shifted once more, his eyes flashing with something darker. "Dispatch. I have a black female in custody. She claims to be a paralegal, but I'm not convinced," he said, his voice dripping with skepticism. Lisa's heart sank again. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The officer's bias was palpable, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She watched as he waited for a response, anxiety coiling tightly in her stomach. Finally, the radio crackled to life. "Officer, are you sure you want to proceed with this? We don't have any reports of a stolen vehicle in that area," the dispatcher said. The officer's jaw clenched. "I'm sure. I'm taking her in for questioning. She doesn't seem right." Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. She felt a mix of anger and despair. This officer was determined to uphold his prejudiced views, regardless of the truth. "Please, just let me go," Lisa begged, her voice trembling. "I'm innocent. You'll see." But the officer simply shrugged, his face set in stone. "You should have thought of that before you decided to drive a stolen car." In that moment, Lisa realized that she was a victim of a system that often failed to protect those who needed it most. She felt a wave of despair wash over her, but she also felt a flicker of defiance. As they drove towards the precinct, Lisa's mind raced. She thought of her family, her friends, her dreams. She thought of the countless stories she had heard of people like her, people who had been wronged by the system, who had fought against injustice, and who had ultimately triumphed. She wouldn't let this officer break her spirit. She would fight back. When they arrived at the precinct, Lisa was led inside, still handcuffed and feeling small. She could hear the murmur of voices, the sound of laughter and camaraderie from the officers around her. But she felt isolated, trapped in a world that didn't understand her. As she was taken to a holding area, Lisa refused to let despair take hold. She began to think of ways to turn the situation around. She needed to make her voice heard, to show that she was more than just a target for prejudice. Hours passed, and Lisa felt the weight of time bearing down on her. The officer who had arrested her was nowhere to be seen, but she knew he was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the chance to further humiliate her. Just when she thought she couldn't take it anymore, the door swung open. A familiar face appeared, her mentor, Judge Marissa Collins. Lisa's heart soared with relief. "Lisa, what on earth happened?" Judge Collins exclaimed, rushing towards her. "Judge Collins, I was just driving home, and he accused me of stealing my own car," Lisa said, her voice cracking with emotion. "He handcuffed me without any reason." Judge Collins' expression turned serious as she listened to Lisa's story. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Lisa. I'll make sure we get this sorted out," she promised, her voice steady and reassuring. With Judge Collins by her side, Lisa felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they confronted the officer who had arrested her. The officer's expression shifted from defiance to unease as Judge Collins laid out the facts, demanding answers for the baseless arrest. As the situation unfolded, tensions ran high. Judge Collins' authority was undeniable, and the officer's facade began to crumble. It became clear that he had acted out of prejudice, fueled by stereotypes that had no place in law enforcement. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officer was forced to admit that he had made a mistake. "I should have handled it differently," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa felt a wave of vindication wash over her. The truth had prevailed, but the scars of the experience would linger long after she was released. As she walked out of the precinct with Judge Collins, Lisa felt a mix of relief and anger. She had fought against injustice, but she knew that the battle was far from over. "I won't let this define me," Lisa said, her voice strong. "I want to make a difference. I want to fight against this kind of prejudice in the legal system." Judge Collins smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "You have the heart of a fighter, Lisa. Together, we can change things." In the following weeks, Lisa poured herself into her work, determined to turn her experience into a catalyst for change. She began to advocate for reform within the police department, speaking out against systemic racism and pushing for better training for officers. Her voice resonated with others who had faced similar injustices, and soon Lisa found herself at the forefront of a movement for change. She organized community meetings, spoke at rallies, and shared her story with anyone who would listen. The more she spoke, the more she realized the power of her voice. With each person she reached, each heart she touched, Lisa felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the months passed, Lisa's efforts began to bear fruit. The police department implemented new training programs focused on bias awareness, and community outreach initiatives were established. Lisa's name became synonymous with the fight for justice, and she found herself standing alongside her mentor, Judge Collins, as they worked towards a better future. In the end, Lisa's journey became more than just a personal story. It was a powerful testament to the strength of resilience and the undeniable importance of standing up against injustice, no matter how insurmountable it may seem. She had faced the harshness of the world head-on, never allowing the pain, the prejudice, and the humiliation to dictate her worth. She refused to let the officers' actions or the weight of the system define her. Instead, she found strength in the very adversity that tried to break her. Her desire to make the world a better place for future generations was now the fire that drove her forward. As she reflected on that fateful day when she had been wronged, her heart swelled with a deep sense of pride. It was not just that she had survived, it was how she had transformed her pain into something meaningful. That day, which had initially been filled with fear, anger, and doubt, had now become a turning point in her life. Lisa had used that experience to fuel her purpose, and in doing so, she had become a beacon of hope for others who felt just as powerless as she had felt in those moments. The hurt she had endured was no longer a symbol of defeat. It had become a reminder of the courage within her and the determination that had only grown stronger since. The small judge's badge she had once held with uncertainty and fear, desperately hoping it would help her escape the unjust situation, now represented something entirely different. It was no longer just a token of her aspirations or a tool for proving her innocence. It had become a symbol of her strength. That simple badge now stood for everything she had fought through, everything she had overcome. It was proof that even in the darkest moments, even when the world seemed against her, one person's voice, one person's fight, could spark change. The officer's refusal to acknowledge the truth, his bias, had not won. Her strength, her will to persist, had. As Lisa continued her journey toward becoming a lawyer, the lessons she had learned from that day stayed with her. She would always fight for what was right, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Every step she took, every decision she made, would be guided by the memories of her struggle. She knew that her experiences would shape the lawyer she would become, one who would never stand idly by when injustice reared its ugly head. And that understanding gave her a profound sense of purpose. In the heart of the city, where sirens often drowned out the sound of laughter and the streets were filled with the noise of struggle, a new story was being written. It was a story of hope, of resilience, and most of all, of the unwavering belief that change was not only possible, but it was happening. It was a story of Lisa Bennett, a young woman who had been wronged, but who would not be silenced. She had fought, and in doing so, she had become the change she had so desperately wished to see. Standing proud in the face of injustice, her heart was full of courage, conviction, and the fierce belief that the world could be better. Lisa knew her fight was far from over, but now she was no longer just a victim of circumstance. She was a force for change, a leader in the fight against the systems that sought to keep others down. With each step forward, Lisa's story continued to unfold, a story that would inspire, empower, and ignite hope in everyone who heard it. The fight for justice was never easy, but Lisa had proven that, with enough courage and heart, even the smallest voice could create ripples of change that would echo across the world. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and found inspiration in Lisa's journey, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support means the world to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread the message of hope, strength, and resilience far and wide. Together, we can make a difference. Stay tuned for more amazing stories, and thanks again for being part of our community.